Where was Herodotus from, Danielle?
Did
Because you had your hand up too, or did you forget?
No, Halicarnassus.
Oh, you're being like super kind of specific here. He's Greek. You had to look that one up. Don't use Google. Herodotus is Greek. Now, question for you. If we have a Greek person writing about the Greco-Persian Wars, do you think he is going to be completely fair and honest about everything? Do you think he's going to be completely fair and honest about everything if we have a Greek person writing about the Persians? All right, we've got Madeline Kate over there. So Madeline Kate.
No.
She says no. If you didn't hear, I couldn't tell. I had to turn off my microphone and my volume so that we don't have like the crazy echo, like there's 10,000 Madeline Kates in here. So yeah, he's not going to be fair and honest. He's going to be pro-Greek, anti-Persian. Now, Herodotus isn't too bad. He's pretty good, but he does call the Persians barbarians, which we know the Greeks saw a barbarian as someone who didn't have any culture. And we already saw that the Persians had awesome culture. They had all this art and statues and buildings and coolness. So we know he's not completely fair if he's already calling them barbarians. But also the Greeks said anyone who's not a Greek is a barbarian. So they'd even be calling Austin a barbarian because Austin's not a Greek. He's American. Yes, Caleb? And then we'll get to Austin after that.
Sorry, I kept my hand up.
Okay. Yes, Austin, sir?
Anything that he says you need to take with a grain of salt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and because we also know that Herodotus is like really big into exaggerating. He's going to be like, there were 200,000 Persian soldiers. And like odds are they probably could not have fielded an army that big because just like how would you feed them and stuff like that. But moving on to the parts where you should probably write. So it all starts with a revolt, rebellion. So we have Darius. We talked about him like a month ago. He was the third king of the Persians. And remember, he's the guy who basically we had Cyrus the Great, who was really awesome. Then we had Cambyses II, who might have been awesome. We don't know because he wound up dying because he got a cut on his leg from his sword falling out of his sheaths, which turned into infection. Or maybe Darius murdered him. We don't know. And we have Darius going and conquering more land. And in 519, Darius conquers this land over here. You should hopefully see my mouse, and you see that it's circling around Thrace, which is in northeastern Greece, and Anatolia, or Asia Minor. You can call it either one. It's the present-day country of Turkey. I'm so glad you do, Daniel. That makes me happy. Now, over here, we have our Ionian Greeks. And remember, the people there are Greeks because when you did so fantastically on your quiz, so proud. You guys got it when the Dorians came in. The Dorians came in from the north, and they're like, whoa, we're mean. We're going to destroy all of you. And then the Greeks are like, let's get the heck out of here. Woo, get on our boats, woo. And they go there. I mean, they also went there, and over there, but there's no map. But they went all over the place. And so these guys are Greeks. And they are now under Persian rule, which is supposed to be great. We talked about this. They're supposed to let you keep your religion. You typically have low taxes. You have people rule. And for all intents and purposes, we don't know if anything really went bad. But they raised taxes. Now, you guys don't have to worry about taxes yet unless you go to the store. And like, I remember when I was a kid, I was so bummed out because I loved getting X-Men cards. I mean, I guess technically they were Marvel cards, but I was particularly looking for members of the X-Men and the Avengers and stuff like that. And I remember being all excited because I had $10 so I could buy 3 packs of cards. And then the bill was like $10.19. I was like, what? I thought it'd be $10. And I was like, well, there's tax. You know, so taxes are something that you guys pay a little bit, but for grown-ups like me, I have to pay taxes on all sorts of stuff. I pay taxes when I get my gas. I pay taxes when I buy anything for fun. I pay taxes on having a house, for Pete's sakes. I have to pay taxes. And it's always been the truth for all the world. When there's a king, they are going to tax you and take your money. Now, the taxes were raised. People typically don't like paying taxes. Taxes do good things. Taxes make us have roads. Taxes make it so you have teachers. I would not be here if your parents did not pay taxes. So thank you, your parents. But they didn't want to pay more taxes. And so they looked across the water. And then they go and they say, well, there's Greece over there. over there, and they're our cousins. And Athens just invented this really cool thing called democracy. They overthrew their tyrant, and now the people are ruling themselves. Democracy, power to the people. Woo! So they go and say, hey, Athens, you guys are so cool because you have democracy. I mean, it's amazing. You're ruling yourselves. You only pay taxes to yourselves. It's great. And these mean Persians are charging us taxes. Can't you come in and help us, please? And Athens is all like, oh, you think we're cool? Really? Okay, we'll come and we'll help. So they send some ships. They send some soldiers, and they go to the city of Miletus. They kick out all of the Persian guards. They kick them out. They beat them up. I mean, actually, more like they slice and dice them, and then they run away. But, try to keep it PG here. And so they kick the Persians out of Miletus. And they get so excited going and kicking the Greeks out of Miletus, the Persians out of Miletus, that they keep marching down that royal road. They go to the capital, Sardis, and they burn it to the ground. Because that's, what you do when you're having fun. You just burn a city to the ground, right? Please don't burn any cities to the ground. Mariah, I know you're thinking about it. Don't do it. Matches, not safe. But they burn the city she's like, what? They burn the city to the ground. And one of the things they burn, not only did they destroy all the Persian stuff in the city of Sardis, they burn down the temple. Now, our country is a little different. These are modern times. Some of us observe different religions. Some of us don't observe any religion. Typically, if a church or a synagogue was burned, people would be upset. They'd be annoyed. But it wouldn't be what it was back then. Because back then, you go down and you go and destroy their temple to Ahura Mazda. Because remember, we talked about Zoroastrianism when they had one god, Ahura Mazda, and everything was a battle between good and evil. Everything. And, Darius III had his power from Ahura Mazda to try to make sure that the good prevails and that the universe doesn't get destroyed. So, that's a lot of pressure, right? And so when the Greeks destroyed the Zoroastrian temple, that was like slapping them in the face. That's like if Alexander walked over to where if Samuel walked over to where Alexander was and just slapped him in the face and said, you are worthless. Don't do that. That's not nice to do to your brother or anybody for that matter. Okay, Samuel? But that's the same thing. It was an insult. It was terrible. It was the worst. And Darius was ticked. All right? Now it became personal. So the Persians gather a big army. Because let's face it, the truth of the matter is, Persian Empire, largest empire of the world at this time. The Persians had a great, awesome army, but most of the soldiers weren't in Ionia. So they weren't, and when I say Ionia, I'm saying Asia Minor, Anatolia, all this right over here, the west coast of modern day Turkey. Okay. They weren't there because everything was peaceful and fine there. It had been 20 years that they'd been conquered. So when the Athenians come in with an army, they weren't ready for it. So when the Persians are ticked and they bring that army back, not only do they recapture the burned remains of Sardis, not only do they go and go do that, they wind up actually going to Miletus, destroying the city of Miletus, and selling the dudes into slavery. They were ticked. Oh, but my students, the story does not end there. No, it does not. So, Persians get revenge, but it's not enough revenge. Now, by the way, the Athenians who went and let this whole revolt happen, came to Miletus and helped overthrow them, when they heard the Persian army was coming, they're like, well, look at the time. We gotta go. See you later, guys. So the Persians totally leave the Ionian Greeks out to dry. And yeah, it's good stuff. Okay, so moving on. Poor Madeline Kate is like, well, Mr. Kenny is even weirder in person. What did I do, coming into this room? And she's laughing, and I know it's true. This is great. So why did the Athenians butt in? Why were they like, oh, we should totally stick our nose in these people's business? Well, first off, they're their Greek cousins, remember. Yes, we know the Greeks were divided. I was so proud of Karachi when she's like, they're separate city-states. They're not one big country. And so many of you echoed that idea. So, wunderbar, das ist gut. And Persia is big and gigantic. And so they saw their cousins being bullied by these big Persian empires and said, we have to help. But also, here's the thing too. It wasn't completely unselfish. Okay? It wasn't completely unselfish. So if you are Greece over here, and do you want the big scary empire that's conquering everything right next to you? Do you want that? You're not going to want that, because where's the big scary empire going to go? They're going to go to you. And you don't want to be conquered by a big scary empire. But if you have a little buffer, a little shield, if you have this area not conquered by the Persian, guess where the Persians are going to conquer next? That area, not you. So it wasn't completely unselfish. It was designed to be a shield, a protector, a border. Okay? So that was part of it. But also, Carson's like, what else could it be? They wanted money. All right? Because if these guys weren't under Persia, then Athens could make a sweet trade deal with them. Make Athens even more wealthy. And especially, Athens needed food. Okay? The Athenians, remember, they can grow grapes and they can grow olives. Now, yes, olives are delicious. It was my mommy's birthday the other day, so I made a fancy dinner for her. And one of the things I got were gorgonzola stuffed olives, and they were delightful. But the Greeks aren't living off of just eating olives. They're not living just off of eating grapes. They're turning those olives, smushing it into olive oil, selling it, make tons of money. But guess what? If you try to drink olive oil, you're going to get sick. Don't do it. Grapes, yeah, they're good. They're tasty. But they turned all that grapes into wine. And if you just had that, that's not going to be good for you either. So they need actual food. And guess what? They grow a ton of food over here. They're nice, beautiful plains, great for growing wheat. And also, they thought, let's get glory. Let's be famous. Let's go conquer these people, or not conquer, help them go defeat the Persians, and so that they can go and, be famous. So Darius vows revenge. Danielle probably remembers this, and some of you probably do. Darius is so mad. Every time he orders his servant that every time he goes and says, remind me to remember the Athenians. So he's like, he's about to go eat his steak. The servant goes, remember the Athenians. If Madeline Kate was closer, I'd go over to her, but then, how do you get the mask on and all this stuff? Haley's at the drive-through McDonald's. She's about to bite into her Big Mac. And, remember the Athenians. They're over at the movie theater eating the popcorn. Remember the Athenians. So Darius is so mad because the Athenians made this revolt happen. He blames the whole thing on Athens. He says, the Athenians made my legions rebel against me. They burned my temple. They burned my temple. He's so mad. But here's the thing. So first off, Darius needs to get revenge, first off, to punish the rebels. Because right now, if I am trying to teach and Madeline Kate was acting bonkers and I didn't do something to stop her, that would tell you the message that anyone could act bonkers anytime and no one would learn anything. And that would be bad news. I wouldn't be doing my job. So you have to stop the rebels. Secondly, it sounds like, the empire right there. Stop the rebels, go. Now, conquer in Greece will give them more money. Remember, money is so often in the middle of everything. They want the moolah. You conquer Greece, you can tax them some money, you get to steal some of their stuff. It's going to be fantastic, but it's even better than that. Because remember, the Athenians were rich from trade. And just like how if the Athenians controlled this area, can make a sweet trade deal, if the Persians controlled this area, they could get into that sweet olive oil and wine trade and make lots of money. And let's face it, they want the money. And finally, of course, glory. They can have battle and win and be famous, and everybody think they're just so swell. So that's why. Now we have one final slide, which you do not have to write. This is a quote from Herodotus. I love that transition. The power of the Athenians had been great before, but now that the tyrants were gone, it became greater than ever. So we have the situation where we're going to have Athens becoming super powerful. It won't be the height of Athenian power, but it's up there. It's starting to go on the rise. And the Persians powerful. So we're going to have these clashes of champions. It's going to be awesome. And we're going to start talking about that clash of champions mañana. I'm stopping the recording right there. Thank you again for reminding me